To me, Chicago is sort of a melting pot of diversity, people. Chicago is made up of 77 different communities, and if you think about that, 77 neighborhoods, communities, generally a community is associated with a cultural organization or a cultural destination. There are the African Americans, you got the South Side African Americans, the North Side, the West Side African Americans, then you have the Italians, you have the Latinos, and just recently I discovered that Puerto Ricans and Mexican Americans are very different, but they represent the same group, if you will. They stand together when it's necessary to stand together and force. So, Chicago to me is just the differences that people represent. They're the good, there's the bad, and there's everything that's in between. So Chicago to me is, and more than any other city, it's sort of a melting pot of diversity, change, likeness. There's a group of teenagers that get together every summer. We have a day camp program we put together for 13, 14, and 15-year-olds, and there were 35 different parks that were probably from 25 different communities that came together, and one of my greatest joys is bringing them together so they can realize the things that they have in common versus the differences that people frequently will showcase that they have about themselves. So to me, Chicago is the things that we all have in common, which allows us to also show the uniqueness about the cultures, the various cultures that we come from. My name is Art Richardson. I've worked for the Chicago Park District for the past 26 years. For the last 16 years, I've been the region director of the Central Region of the Chicago Park District. And just to put that into perspective, the area that I oversee is the middle portion of the city. It's North Avenue to the north, 51st Street to the south, and the city limits west and the waters of Lake Michigan to the east. Well, gentrification is sort of it's a hot button topic. To me, gentrification means someone who wants to come into a community and reap the benefits of those who have suffered through the change of that community. To me, gentrification means if you've been in a neighborhood that's had to endure changes through poverty, educational imbalances, cultural challenges, for you to be able to suffer through that, and then all of a sudden someone wants to come and reap the benefits of those changes and not have to suffer through what you suffered through. To me, that's what gentrification is, and it's happening all over the city of Chicago. I currently live in South Shore, and South Shore is the destiny of the Obama Foundation, the Presidential Library, if you will. There's also been some discussion that the old Regal Theater on 79th and Stony Island is going to be redone and repurposed by Kanye West. Those are two anchors, one on the south and one on the north, that will change South Shore and make it more of a destination point. South Shore has always been a place that people have wanted to live because of its proximity to Lakeshore Drive and Lake Michigan to the east. So for the individuals who've endured some of the challenges over the past 15, 20, 30 years, and for them to not be able to afford to live in the neighborhood because of the rising taxes, the changes in the neighborhood, to me that's gentrification, where somebody can afford to come in and not have to worry about suffering through the challenges, but to be able to benefit from the new neighborhood that's going to be created from all of the anchors that are being discussed. That's a problem.
Booster Reams, 22, west side of Chicago.
Okay. To start it off, how would you describe Chicago? Like, how do you just feel about the city?
It's home. I grew up, born and raised here. I was born on the west side, grew up out west and in the west suburbs, west side. It's a cultural epicenter. There's a lot of things going on. It's a lot of different people. You know, I learned a lot about myself and a lot about others. Just being able just to live through life being in Chicago.
Okay, so now to go into it, what is your viewpoint on just the cultural divide in Chicago? Like, is there a big cultural divide between the city and the south side and the west side? Like, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I feel like it's between sides is definitely a cultural division. But also Chicago's probably the most like segregated city within the United States of America. And growing up, I didn't go to school with like different like kids or like different people. It was all majority like black kids, like POC. When I was in school until I got to college, really. In high school, it was a little bit more like diverse. But when I went to Columbia, that's when I really started seeing like different cultures. And one thing I always say, like being within the city, I like going to different parts of the city to see how different people live because the culture divide is so strong. And I think everybody has a purpose and has a story to tell. So I think it's important to experience what somebody else is going through or like understand their background too.
Okay, so I guess is there anything you think Chicago can do, like the city can do to change or improve the cultural divide and have it be a more diverse city?
Support and resource. I think that's the beginning of a lot of things. When you got resource, that's when people become literate and finance. They become free. And I feel like that goes anywhere from like cultural divide to like arts to politics, anything within the city. Like I think if we support each other and we find ways to make one thing into more than just more moving parts, a conglomerate of sorts, like a fist, we come together, it's even stronger.
Alright, so moving on, gentrification in Chicago, it's a pretty big thing happening right now, both south and west sides. What's your viewpoint?
Gentrification is like strong. I've been in different cities, and I feel like it's starting to happen like in other places too. It's happening all over America. Like Chicago, not the only place it's happening too. But it's just interesting because you're living in a community and like some of the things that I grew up on, it's not there no more. And like it's still a memory, but it's not physically there. So me being an artist, I feel like being able to tell those stories, keep those things alive. And me being here and leaving that behind, it allows the next generation to keep stories and to create their own like unique trends and just they story or their life.
Do you think that there's any way to change the way gentrification is happening to make it like better, or do you think it's just gonna continue happening and there's nothing to really do about it?
I mean, if it's a thing happening, it's always a cause and effect. So I definitely think actions change the course of things. Knowing the answer to that, I feel like it's sort of complicated but simplistic at the same time. But I think it just comes down to one simple thing: it's just resource, and then allowing everybody to have resource, if that makes sense. So just having communities where everybody can thrive and can have resource that's equal, that they have equal opportunity, I think is important.
And then also, so you told me that you're a musician. What kind of message are you trying to give off with your music?
When I rap, I talk about things people can relate to. I'm from out west, and like growing up, I feel like sometimes you experience things, and my job and my purpose in this life is to tell those stories that we all experience. So that's me, my homies, people that I don't know that live like across the world, that live in this country. I'm supposed to be telling their story to give them inspiration to hope. And what I hope to do with like the inspiration is just take the hope and then it translates into action. So whatever my music is just showing people that you can do whatever you want to if you want to apologetically being yourself and you being yourself authentically too.
This is my kind of last question. Everyone in the world has a really big stereotype on Chicago of like, oh, it's a crime-filled city, and like, oh, the South Side's really bad, the West Side's really bad. Can you like speak on that a little bit? Like, what would you say to those people that say that's like?
I would say Chicago is a beautiful city. I mean, you know, it's good that comes with the bad. I would say that. I think it's a lot of more depth to this city. I think when they don't know what Chicago is, a lot of people that I've met that's not from here, they come here, they be like, man, it's a lot of culture. And one thing I would just ask people to, when they think about Chicago, they see Chicago, is just to try to get an understanding of it. I know like it's hard to do that when you're not a native of it, but you can just walk around and just live and just let things flow. And I think when you allow that to happen in life and just take things for what they are, you will see how beautiful they are and see how beautiful Chicago is.